One of the biggest mistakes that I see investors make is selecting the wrong market. And what happens a lot of times is I talk to investors who have built a portfolio in a specific market because it felt like the right place to invest, but it was based on feelings as opposed to the data. And the market and property type doesn't actually align with their goals. And so years down the road, they're trying to improve the performance of these properties that are just never going to get them to their goal, typically of financial freedom, because it's just the wrong type of property or the wrong market. And so what I recommend is spending more time up front, getting super clear on the market that aligns most closely with your goal, especially if the goal is financial freedom, and then going deep in that market. And then you can make mistakes. You can do a lot of things. You can really screw up, actually, if you pick the right market and the right property type and still come out ahead because the return or the ROI or the cash flow is so high. So in this video, I'm going to talk through 3 of the top markets that I recommend to buy in right now if you want to invest in short-term rentals for the specific purpose of getting to financial freedom. So this week, or actually just yesterday, Airdna came out with this new mapping feature. And they just announced it yesterday. They said previously data on individual cities was often too limited. Now all U.S. properties are grouped into markets and submarkets that are more actionable and insightful. Try it out and be on the lookout for a webinar from our chief economist, Jamie Lane, coming soon. So Jamie Lane was a guest on my podcast, Living Off Rentals podcast, and I like Jamie Lane a lot. He's a really smart guy. It's a great episode if you want to go back and listen to that. But I think the market analysis that Airdna does, and I understand why they do it. They have to appeal to a lot of different types of investors with a lot of different goals, but I think it can be very misleading if your goal is financial freedom, because a lot of people will go to it and they rate these cities based on a market score. So let me pull this out. So you can see with this mapping feature, they list out the top cities and they rate them with this market score. So San Juan is 100, Kauai is 99, Las Vegas 99. So you can scroll through and see the rankings. And these rankings are based on, we'll just pull up Kauai. The market score definition is how well the market performs out of 100. The score is based on how the market has performed across demand, revenue growth, seasonality, regulation, and investability. So it would seem like, okay, Kauai, for example, has a 99, so out of 100. So Kauai must be the best place to invest. So if I want to get to financial freedom, I should go invest in Kauai. And, you can see the initial numbers. You're looking at occupancy rate of 72%, which is pretty high. So low seasonality, average daily rate of over $500 a night. So you think Kauai is the place to go. I'm going to make a bunch of money if I go to Kauai. So let's plug in Kauai into my vacation rental analyzer tool just to look at the overall average numbers if you were to invest in Kauai. So I just Googled the average price point in Kauai, pops up here. The median listing home price in Kauai, Hawaii was $1.3 million in April of 2024, and that's down 13.3% year over year. So going back then, plugging in 1.3 as the average purchase price for the average property in Kauai, then you can make some assumptions around other costs like closing costs, after repair value, after you furnish it, that sort of thing. Annual property taxes, $9.85 per every $1,000 of assessed value. So I just put in an estimate of around $10,000 there. Annual insurance of around $7,000. I'm not putting any repair costs. We're just going to assume it's turnkey, and then furnishing about $30,000. So if you got a typical DSCR loan, which is an investment loan, which typically you can get if the property cash flows at about 80% of the purchase price. So that way, if that's the case, they'll give you a loan for $1,040,000. So you're going to have to come up with about $250,000 as a down payment. Rates are around 8.25% right now if you're at an 80% LTV. So then we go on to the income and expense calculations of investing in a property in Kauai. So the average between the high and low season, 509 with the 72% occupancy. So $500 a night, 72% occupancy leads to an annual income of $133,000. Plus you add in your cleaning fees. So you're going to be about $143,000. So it sounds like, man, that's amazing. I'm making, well into the 6 figures on this one property. Then you go down to the expenses and figure out what that looks like. So your mortgage alone is going to be $7,800 on this property. Then your insurance taxes, cleaning fees, utilities, your lawn and snow removal, probably not a whole lot of snow in Kauai, but you're going to have lawn to cut probably, consumables, say $200 a month. That's like toilet paper, paper paper towels, stuff like that. And then you've got your maintenance set aside. You always want to set aside something for maintenance. So when we go to our deal calculations, then you can see we're bringing in $143,000, but we're spending $137,000 if everything is average and everything goes as planned. So we're making a total cash flow of $5,000 per month, or $459 per month. So that's $459 per month on your $250,000 down payment, plus furnishing costs, plus closing costs, that sort of thing. So your cash on cash return on this investment is 1.82%. So that means for every dollar you're putting in, you're getting a return on that dollar of 1.82%. So if your goal is, the highest ROI, the highest cash flow possible, then why not put your money in a mutual fund? It's going to be a lot easier to manage than a property in Kauai, a short-term rental in Kauai. And you're probably going to average about 8% on your money as opposed to 1.82%. So Kauai at first blush, it seems like, okay, the income's really high, a beautiful area. Who wouldn't want to own a property in Kauai, Hawaii that you can bring your family to? It's a great thing to share on social media and impress all your friends that you got a place in Kauai. But at the end of the day, is it getting you to your goal of financial freedom? If your goal is financial freedom, $459 in a, standard scenario probably isn't going to move the needle too much. So this is very counterintuitive because the three markets that I'm about to go through and recommend are very different from Kauai and seem like they wouldn't perform nearly as well as a place like Kauai as a short-term rental, but they actually do so much better. So another one on the list, if I scroll down on the Airdna list, let me go back to the overall list here. So I scroll down, I'm just looking at like the top 20 here. And another one that comes up here in the top 20 as I scroll through, there's some that are good. There's some that are absolutely, I think, terrible. I saw Los Angeles on here, New York, like some that are just so challenging to even invest in. The price points are off the charts. Like there's so many things against it. I have no idea why they'd be at the top of the list. But one like Wisconsin Dells, most people would probably brush by this and go, okay, there's no way that's as good of an investment as Kauai, Hawaii. It's got a 60% occupancy, $331 average daily rate. So let's plug those numbers in and just see what that looks like. So if we go to the details, so I Googled the average price of property in Wisconsin Dells. It's $273,429. Okay, so you can go back and plug that in. So if you buy the average property and it brings in the average nightly rate and occupancy, we'll see what that looks like. So you can plug in, again, all the assumptions based on the average property taxes are 1.8%. Again, 80% loan to value. So you're only putting down $54,000 in this case. And then you do the calculations, $331 at 60% occupancy. You're bringing in $72,000 in this case. After your cleaning fees, you're bringing in about $82,000 annually. So then you can look at your expenses on this one and how much lower your mortgage is and property taxes and insurance and most likely your utility costs. The rest of this is about the same here. Hey, real quick, the sponsor for today's video is the #1 banking platform built specifically for rental property investors. I am constantly looking for the best tools to manage my properties and my finances, and in my opinion, BaseLane has built the ultimate all-in-one solution. BaseLane allows you to set up unlimited virtual bank accounts and debit cards for better visibility in your cash flow and finances. And you can also do other things like sign leases with tenants, collect rent, keep track of your books, and review your analytics. And finally, it's all in one place. Plus, they have the industry-leading annual percentage yield, which is just a fancy way of saying you make a lot more money on the money that you have deposited in your BaseLane bank accounts. So I personally use the platform along with over 40,000 other real estate investors. So you can use the link that just popped up, and it's also in the video description below, and open as many business bank accounts as you want, and it's all for free. The link is baselane.com/Kirby, which is my first name. That's BASELANE.com/KIRBY. Then we go to our deal calculations, and because we're making $82,000 and we have total expenses of $51,000, now we're bringing in $30,000 or $31,000 annually of net income of cash flow. That's after all your expenses. So that equates to $2,571 monthly on a monthly basis. So when you look at the investment of $56,000 down payment compared to the $250,000 down payment in Kauai, and you look at the cash flow of $2,571 compared to $450 in Kauai, your cash on cash return is absolutely through the roof comparatively. 35%, 35.38% is what you're making on every dollar you invest, which is way above what most people target in real estate for a typical like long-term rental property. So like I said, it's very counterintuitive, and these are the types of places that work really well. Now, obviously there's a lot of assumptions that we're building in here. These are just averages, but there's ways that I recommend to optimize your property in these markets. So you can actually even achieve higher than that average return, that 35.38%. And I'll talk about that in a second, but I want to go through the 3 markets that I recommend. So what I did is I just pulled the basically top 20 or so markets that show up on Airdna's list, and I looked at, and there's a couple others too that I thought were pretty good, but there's 3 that kind of stood out to me that I wanted to go through. So here they are. And these aren't in really any particular order. Chattanooga is a bit lower than the other 2, and I'll explain why I have that one on there as well. There's a few others like Dayton, Ohio was in the top 20. That was another one that could have made the list as well. But what you want to look at is the average income, which is basically your nightly rate times your occupancy times 365. That tells you on average what you're going to bring in on an annual basis. So that's very important to understand that. Then look at the average price point of properties in that area. So, you can Google that and figure that out. Then if you just put the average income over the average price point, you can figure out what your ROI is just from cash flow. This doesn't take into account the tax benefits, depreciation of the property, the appreciation of the property over time, principal pay down, all of the other benefits that come with owning real estate. This is just purely return from cash flow. And so the ROI in Wisconsin Dells, like we just talked about, is on average 26.5%. Then another one that's a similar type of area, it's obviously further south. There's different pros and cons to each market, but again, the average income in Savannah, Georgia, based on a nightly rate of $348 times a 60% occupancy is $76,000, and the average price point is $317. So you've got a ROI of 24%. And then finally, Chattanooga is an average income of, the nightly rate is $219, 55% occupancy. And so the average income is $44,000 compared to $303,000 average price point. So 14% ROI. So that's a little bit lower, but I included that one because what I recommend in order to optimize your investment in these markets is not to just buy the average in the market. So don't just go to the city of Savannah, Georgia and say, I want to buy the average property. You can optimize in cities or towns like this really easily to improve the performance way above what the average is here. And the way you do that is you pick cities and towns like this that have a pretty decent population center, especially, Savannah and Chattanooga. Wisconsin Dells not quite as high, but it's close to some other population centers. And you pick an area just outside of that city where you can get the price point. So the average price point maybe in that city of Savannah is $317, but if you pick a town just outside, the average price point might be $200,000. And so you can buy a property that's at a big discount, but the nightly rate in a lot of cases is still pretty close to what it is downtown. So you're optimizing for the highest income compared to the lowest price point. Then on top of that, what I always recommend is to buy multiple units on the same property. So I don't just mean like buy a duplex or a triplex. You can buy a house. We just listed our most recent one that was a single family house. It was a 3-1. We changed it into a 3-2 when we rehabbed it. And then it had a ADU or casita or coach house or whatever you want to call it, depending on what part of the country you're in, but basically another unit in the backyard that was a standalone unit. And that property is just a studio, but it's an extra source of income. And so a lot of times you can buy multiple units for right around the same price point as a single family home, like the one I just mentioned. So we bought it for $94,000 in our target market of Michigan City, Indiana, which is very similar to these types of markets. And $94,000 was the same price or cheaper than we could buy just a regular single family house, but it already had this ADU with separate electric service and gas and all the utility hookups, even though it needed a big rehab. So now once we rehabbed it, we had 2 sources of income for about the same price as a single family home. So your expenses stay the same, but you pile on this extra unit worth of income, which basically is pure profit. So these 3 markets, I think, stand out as top markets in the top 20. And I think it's really important to make sure that the market that you select aligns really well with your goals. So if your goal is just long-term appreciation, you don't care about cash flow, you just maybe want to break even, maybe you want to use it yourself, then Kauai might be the place to invest. I'm not down on Kauai or down on any of these other markets, but I think people go into short-term rental investing with the assumption that all properties in all markets are sort of created equal in terms of they're going to get you to that same goal of financial freedom, and they work very, very differently. So if the goal is financial freedom, some of these more affordable markets that still have a pretty elevated nightly rate and occupancy, which fly under the radar in a lot of cases because they're not intuitively the like prime vacation markets, these ones can work really, really well. So I work with people to help them buy their first really high cash flowing short-term rental. I have a program called the First Vacation Rental Investment Blueprint where I walk you through the whole process. I walk you through the process of selecting the perfect market for you. And just like I talked about here at sort of a broad scale, we get into the details of figuring out the ideal market for you, the ideal type of property, and really how to optimize that to get the absolute highest cash flow possible so that you can get to financial freedom and replace your 9 to 5 as quickly as humanly possible. So if you're interested in working with me on that, you can set up a call with me. It's at livingoffrentals.com/start. Again, that's livingoffrentals.com/start. You can go there. There's a quick questionnaire, and then you get access to my calendar. You can book a call with me, and we can talk through your goals and see if it's a good fit for you. Thanks for joining me for this video. God bless, and I'll see you in the next video.